Since the inception of the channel, I've always tried to keep things in their proper place. Current critiques are movies that come out in the year that we're in. Retro reviews, obviously, are old films. But what happens when something isn't current, so not in the year we're in, but is far too new to be retro? I've always struggled with that conceptually because it didn't really seem to fit. But what happened to me today was I conceived of the movie Catch-Up. And so this will be where movies that didn't come out in the year we're in or aren't, let's say, more than 8 years old. Because, okay, let's say 8 years old, we'll throw that in a retro review. But if it's like 7 years from the time of recording, or like last year, or 6 years prior to that, we'll put that in the movie Catch-Up because it's not necessarily retro and it's certainly not current. It is just movies that I am catching up on that I missed out on when they came out. And so this one, this first ever movie Catch-Up, is going to be a, I don't want to say triple shot because that's its own entity of what I think will happen and what I want to happen in a wild card pick, but it will be 3 consecutive years of movies that I caught up on over the weekend. So the 2021 film Queenpins, the 2022 film of The Adam Project, and the 2023 film of Anyone But You. The beauty of this merged concept is it is 3 separate, different styles of film, and, you know, again, it's 3 separate years, and so it should lend itself to the different, it should be more fun and upbeat, maybe even offbeat, because that's what the comedy of Queenpins was called. We've got comedy and action science fiction of The Adam Project, and then the very almost unromantic comedy of Anyone But You. And in that you have 2 stars on the rise at the time, and, you know, even thereafter, in Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell. And so after the ad read and after the open rolls, I'm going to talk about these movies that I caught up on. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular here at Mr. Super Oz, I just want to thank you for tuning in to the channel. It exists because I, Oz, from the channel Mr. Super Oz, I wrote a 68-page graphic novel called Everlasting Survivors. Volume 1 is called All Day Long. If you follow the link in the description of this video, you can get yourself hats, shirts, posters, all kinds of fun things. But most importantly, you can get the story itself. And the more people that pick up the story, the greater the chances are that there can be continued adventures with these heroes. If you could, give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, leave a comment, enjoy. Only for this one will I talk about, well, I think only for this one. It all depends on how it goes. That's how the channel evolves. But definitely for this one, I'll talk about 3 movies. Queenpins, which I thought was only passable 2 out of 5 stars. The Adam Project, which is 5 out of 5 stars. And Anyone But You, which was a good 4 out of 5 stars. Let's start with the earliest released movie, that being Queenpins, starring Kristen Bell. It also has Joel McHale, who I'm a big fan of, just those two alone I thought was going to make this funnier than it was. Paul Walter Hauser is in it, and, you know, I find him to be a enjoyable actor. I really liked Richard Jewell. But the thing is, the movie, to me, didn't really take off until the introduction of Vince Vaughn's character, who, when Paul Walter Hauser tries to get help from the FBI, he thinks that they are sending him help in Vince Vaughn, when in reality he's actually, what did he call him, U.S. Postal Inspector, I think? But his character was the real entertainment or enjoyment infusion that the film required, or that I often desired. Because the problem was, Joel McHale and Kristen Bell, who I often think are both fun and upbeat, entertaining actors, they both were somber and downtrodden throughout the movie, which is totally understandable given that when we meet them, they are nearly $200,000 in debt. I think it was actually like $198,000 and change for IVF, in vitro fertilization fees, because the two characters were married and were unsuccessful in having a family on their own, so they try to go the scientific route, as I jokingly call it. And even then, spending that kind of money and going through all that effort, they had no success. And I mean, it's a scary ordeal. I've already experienced the unsuccess of things, and it's extra jarring to think that you could be that deep into spending money to make it happen and it still be unsuccessful. And like I said, with that, it makes it so hard to enjoy anything that's happening, because you start in such a deep, dark place. And while Kristen Bell's character is couponing and getting a winner's high, I think she calls it, or something like that. Like, that's not exactly what she calls it, but while she's feels like she's doing well by couponing, Joel, much like myself, is like, oh, you know, is it really winning if you're buying a thing you don't need? And so kind of raining on her parade, if you will. But I don't know. Like I said, it's hard to get behind what's happening. And Paul Walter Hauser's character, when he realizes that he thinks they're counterfeiting coupons, but he can't find a flaw, because they're not actually counterfeiting the coupons. They've gone to the manufacturer down in Mexico and said, hey, why don't you skim some off the top for us, put simply. And so that's why the loss prevention worker, Paul Walter Hauser, can't find the flaw, because there isn't one. It's the actual real thing that they are using. And BB Rexa has a role as like a cyber, like she originally started as a identity thief for a character named JoJo, and then they end up using her to help them do the whole thing to get their dirty money clean by pretending that they're selling makeup, but they're too dense to even realize it. Anyway, like I said, overall, the movie's only passable because it takes Vince Vaughn's introduction to make it enjoyable. I really wanted this movie to be like the Zach Galifianakis entertaining crime comedy Masterminds, but this just isn't that. So let's talk about The Adam Project, starring Ryan Reynolds, Mark Ruffalo, and I'm going to say Gamora for her real name escaping me, but the actress who plays Gamora in the MCU. It's basically the opposite from Queenpins. Not only do I think it is great in execution and character development, but we start out in such a fun and exciting way, whereas within Queenpins, they did not start upbeat and positive whatsoever. In the Atom Project, we start out with a jet plane being chased by another, and the pilot, Ryan Reynolds, being shot. It gave me flashes of Green Lantern conceptually because of Ryan Reynolds playing Hal Jordan, the fighter pilot. But the upside about the Atom Project is that we don't jump to different planets. We don't have an alien yellow parasite looking thing trying to overtake people, scare them. And we don't have our hero quitting, which were all downsides of the Green Lantern movie. But this film, the hero, Adam, played by Ryan Reynolds, and also a kid who plays a 12-year-old version of himself, he is so steadfast in his mission of getting back in time from 2050 to 2018, with a stop-off in 2022, the release year of the film. But because of him being shot, he doesn't enter in the proper information, and he lands early, which is beneficial because he's able to fix up his wound and pick up his younger self to be able to fly the jet, because the jet is tied to his DNA. So he has to use the younger version of himself because the older version is messed up or whatever. It's fine. It's simple logic to get from point A to point B, no problem. And I actually enjoyed older Adam picking up younger Adam and taking him to 2018 with him, because if it was only Ryan Reynolds confronting Mark Ruffalo, his father character, I'm not entirely certain it would have all worked out in the way that it does, because the younger Adam in the 2018 storyline, I don't know if it's inadvertently or just because he's 12 and, talks too much, gives away information to his father that really, I think, is pivotal to him deciding to take part in this mission of destroying time travel as a way to save the future. Because, I'm not going to say spoiler, because, the movie's easily available to anyone who has Netflix, but it's it's the mission of 2050 Adam to destroy time travel before it exists, which then will obviously make his mission null and void, because he, by destroying time travel, will be pulled back into the time that he came from. But they do a really fun play with time, much like how in the DC comic Flashpoint they say that time has ripples, much like water has ripples when you throw a rock through it. This movie, they don't give it a fun analogy like that, but they say that it takes time for things to reset or to take effect. And so after the time travel mechanism is destroyed, the algorithm, I think they called it, the 12-year-old, the 40-year-old we'll call him, and the father all get a chance to play a game of catch before the two Adams are taken back to their timelines. And the movie is just so great. It might not be accurate, because that's the thing about science fiction and time travel, but what it does well is make it so that you care about the characters, because Adam's 12-year-old Adam, guess both of them, but Adam's father died a year and a half before adult Adam lands in 12-year-old Adam's timeline, and so the 12-year-old Adam is being hard on his mother and taking things out on her, his pain. He's taking his pain out on her because she's putting up a a tough front to make it seem like she's got it all together. And so young dumb Adam treats her badly because in his eyes, in his mind, you know, she's not hurt as much as he is. And so older Adam at a bar explains to his mother, she doesn't know that he's her son, but older Adam explains to Jennifer Garner that, you know, her son does love her and that, you know, he doesn't even realize that he's doing what he's doing. And it's a great scene when adult Adam tells the young Adam that, you know, hug your mom tight because, you know, he wishes he could. And, you know, it's so relatable. And, yeah, that's why it's a great movie, is because it's easy to relate to the characters. And so last and finally, when this first ever movie catch-up, Anyone But You came out last year, 2023, and it starred characters that are just, or characters, it starred actors playing characters who are just on the rise, with Sydney Sweeney and Glen Powell. Glen Powell, I feel like, can do no wrong right now, because Twisters, which I had nearly no expectation for, exceeded all of expectations. And Sydney Sweeney, I feel like ever since she was on SNL hosting, has just been an internet darling. But the movie, I think I said it before the ad reading the open roll, it felt like an almost anti-romantic comedy because of the animosity between the two characters, which is extra entertaining when you get to the finish line, because it's mostly make-believe, the animosity that is. It's as if one simple conversation that eventually does happen would have changed the entire dynamic of the film, because they were both putting on a strong face for the other, because they both were hurt by things that weren't even meant to hurt them. But the movie overall was good. It's a 4 out of 5. I think that, like I said, you do one conversation earlier and it's an entirely different movie. But the angst, the antagonistic nature of the characters' relationship is fun to watch. So there's one point where both characters each have people who support them on their side, trying to manipulate both Glen Powell and Sydney into getting together, because if they're not at odds, it'll make everybody's time more pleasant. And so when they know this, they're like, oh, well, let's just let people believe they convinced us to get together, even though they're making it all up and faking it. And so they are trying to put on a show to everybody that they're lovey-dovey, but everybody's distracted by a koala bear and don't even see the fake touchy-feely nature of what's happening. But what makes it extra awesome is Sydney says to Glenn that she feels I think it was like a bump, or she's like, oh, do you have a mole? And then it's revealed that it was a big spider, and so he freaks out and takes all his clothes off and throws them, and tells her that she needs to check and see if she has a spider on her, and all she does is just feel around and not take off her clothes and throw them. And it's great because he's like, oh, you did that way better than I did, or something like that. I'm getting the verbiage wrong, but he just, it's like a light bulb went off and he's like, oh yeah, that is the correct response to this, not what I did. But yeah, overall, good movie, 4 out of 5. It's quite enjoyable. Again, it's on Netflix, so if you have it, I recommend checking it out. It's not something I would rush to go see per se, but it's definitely worth the time to invest in checking it out. And I almost wish that I hadn't waited as long as I did, but that's the crazy thing about this new addition to the channel, the movie catch-up, is generally it will be things that I probably should have or definitely had a desire to watch to begin with, but because time is so fleeting, I'll say, it just, you think you got it and poof, it's gone. That's why I haven't had the opportunity to check out all these things that now I'm going to try and go back and catch up on. So, thank you for taking this journey with me to catch up on movies that I have missed over the last few years. Come back all week for fun content from the channel. Enjoy.